My name is Tom. I'm 55 years old, and for more than 3 decades of my life, I've been a truck driver. I never imagined I'd end up here, sitting in a quiet room, telling strangers on the internet about the darkest chapter of my life. But sometimes, sharing your pain is the only way to heal, or at least to make sense of it. I grew up in a working-class family in Ohio. My dad was a factory worker, a man of calloused hands and quiet dignity. My mom waited tables most of her life. We didn't have much, but we had love, discipline, and a sense of family that kept us together. Dad used to tell me, "Son, money comes and goes, but loyalty, that's what makes a man." After high school, I didn't have the luxury of going to college. Bills had to be paid, and I needed to stand on my own feet. So I got my commercial driver's license and started hauling loads across the country. At first, it was supposed to be temporary, just a way to save some money before I figured out what I really wanted to do. But life has a funny way of keeping you where you start. Before I knew it, I was spending weeks on the road, watching the sun rise and set through the windshield of an 18-wheeler. Trucking wasn't glamorous, but it gave me a decent living. And along the way, I met the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. Her name was Linda. We met at a small diner just off I-70 in Indiana. I still remember the first time I saw her, dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail. Tired eyes but the warmest smile you could imagine. She was working the night shift as a waitress, juggling customers and stress. But when she smiled at me, it felt like I was the only person in the room. I kept coming back to that diner, even when I didn't have to. At first it was just for the coffee. Then it was for the conversation. Eventually, it became for her. One night, after weeks of small talk, I finally asked her out. She laughed nervously, wiped her hands on her apron, and said yes. We didn't have a fancy romance. No candlelight dinners, no exotic vacations. Just two hard-working people finding comfort in each other's company. I was on the road most of the time, but she waited for me. She believed in me, or at least that's what I thought. We got married 2 years later in a small church. My parents were there, her side of the family too. Nothing extravagant. Just a gathering of people who believed in love and commitment. And for a long time, I believed we had it. Our early years of marriage weren't easy. Money was always tight. Linda dreamed of having her own boutique someday, a little clothing shop where she could be her own boss. I promised her we'd get there. I drove longer hours, picked up extra shifts, and saved every penny we could. The problem with trucking, though, is distance. While I was out on the open road, Linda was home alone. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, and even a couple of Christmases. She used to say she understood, it was for our future. But over time, I started noticing the changes. Her phone calls became shorter. The warmth in her voice faded. Sometimes she wouldn't even pick up when I called from a truck stop late at night. I told myself it was just stress, or that she was tired. I didn't want to believe anything else. Fast forward to last year. I got an overseas contract, hauling specialized equipment across military bases in Europe. It was a golden opportunity. And the pay was almost double what I usually earned. I was excited because I thought this would finally give us the financial boost we needed to chase her dream. I told Linda, just a few months, and then we'll have enough to start that boutique you always wanted. She didn't smile the way I expected. She just nodded, almost reluctantly, and muttered, "Do what you have to do, Tom." Still, I convinced myself it was fine. She was just worried about me being away for that long. I packed my bags, kissed her goodbye, and flew to Germany for the contract. For the first few weeks, things seemed normal. We exchanged emails, a few video calls here and there. But then, out of nowhere, everything changed. One cold morning in February, I opened my inbox at a base in Stuttgart and saw her name. I expected a routine message, maybe a little update about home, maybe a "miss you" note. Instead, I got the shock of my life. The subject line read, "We're done." I froze. My hands trembled as I clicked it open. Inside, the words cut me deeper than any knife ever could. "Tom, I can't do this anymore. I don't love you the way I used to. I've filed for divorce. By the time you read this, the accounts will already be empty. Please don't try to contact me. This is for the best." That was it. No phone call. No face-to-face conversation. Just an email. I rushed to check our joint bank account online, praying it wasn't true. But it was. Every dollar, gone. The savings I'd spent decades building, the money I thought would secure our future, it had all vanished overnight. I sat there in that tiny barracks room, staring at the empty balance on the screen, feeling like someone had ripped the ground out from under me. My chest felt heavy, like I couldn't breathe. I wanted to call her, but she had blocked me everywhere, phone, email, even social media. I reached out to a couple of mutual friends, but they stayed silent. One finally wrote back, "Tom, I'm sorry, but she's moved on. You should too." Moved on. Just like that. After 27 years of marriage. After everything we'd built together. I spent nights lying awake in that foreign country, wondering what I had done wrong. Was it the long hours? The missed anniversaries? Or had she found someone else while I was out chasing paychecks? The loneliness hit me harder than anything I'd ever felt. Imagine being thousands of miles away from home, betrayed by the one person you trusted most, and having no way to fight back. For weeks, I spiraled. I kept driving, delivering those loads across Europe, but my mind wasn't on the road. It was stuck in Ohio, in a little house that no longer felt like mine. One night, while parked at a rest stop outside Munich, I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, my face hollow. I whispered, "Is this it, Tom? Is this how your story ends, broken, abandoned, and penniless?" But deep down, a spark lit up. I remembered my father's words, "Money comes and goes, but loyalty is what makes a man." And suddenly, I realized, Linda had taken my money, but she hadn't taken my dignity. She hadn't taken my fight. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this be the end of my story. I didn't know exactly how I'd do it, but I promised myself I'd find a way to rebuild, not just my finances, but my life. And maybe, just maybe, I'd find a way to make her regret the day she thought she could throw me away like garbage. That night in Munich, staring into the mirror of my truck, I made a promise to myself. Linda might have stolen my money and shattered my heart, but she wouldn't take my future. The first step was survival. I finished my overseas contract, pushing through the pain, forcing myself to focus on the road. Every delivery, every mile I drove, I reminded myself, this isn't the end. This is the beginning of something new. When I finally flew back to the States, I didn't even go straight home. What was there to return to? A half-empty house that didn't feel like mine anymore. Instead, I stayed a few nights at a buddy's place, Rick, another trucker I'd known for 20 years. Rick was the kind of friend you could call at 3 a.m. and he'd still answer. When I told him what happened, his face hardened. "Damn, Tom. She did you dirty. But you know what? You're still standing. That means you've got a chance to fight back." And that's when the fire really started burning inside me. I hired a lawyer, even though I didn't have much left. At first, I thought there was no point, she'd already drained the account. Filed the papers. But my lawyer reminded me, after 27 years of marriage, Linda didn't get to just walk away with everything. The legal battle was long and ugly. She tried to play the victim, painting me as an absent husband who cared more about the road than his family. But I had years of pay stubs, proof of the hours I worked, the money I sent, the sacrifices I made. The court saw through her lies. In the end, she didn't get to keep everything. I was awarded half of what she tried to steal back, plus a portion of her retirement savings she thought I'd never touch. It wasn't about the money, though. It was about justice. About proving that I wasn't just going to roll over and let her betrayal define me. But here's the thing, winning in court didn't heal the emptiness inside. I still woke up in the middle of the night, reaching for a woman who wasn't there anymore. I still replayed her words, that cold email, over and over in my head. So I decided to change my life. I sold the house. Every corner of it carried memories that hurt too much to bear. Instead, I bought a modest cabin outside of Nashville, nothing fancy, just a quiet place with a porch where I could watch the sunrise without feeling suffocated by the past. I cut down my trucking hours too. For years, the road had been my escape, but now I wanted to start living, not just surviving. I picked up local routes, which gave me more time at home. At first, the silence was crushing. I'd sit on that porch, coffee in hand, and wonder if loneliness was going to be my only companion for the rest of my life. But slowly, something changed. I reconnected with my sister, whom I hadn't seen in years. She brought me to family dinners, where I got to know my nieces and nephews again. I joined a small trucker support group. Men and women who'd all been through divorces, betrayals, and heartaches. Listening to their stories, sharing mine, it felt like I wasn't alone anymore. And then came the unexpected part. Her name was Carol. She was a retired schoolteacher, a widow who lived not too far from my cabin. We met at the grocery store, of all places, both reaching for the same jar of peanut butter. We laughed about it, struck up a conversation, and before I knew it, we were having coffee together on my porch. With Carol, there were no games, no hidden agendas. She listened when I spoke, really listened. She didn't judge me for my past, and I didn't feel the need to hide my scars. She once told me, "Tom, sometimes life breaks us down so we can rebuild stronger. Maybe that's what this is for you." She was right. Months passed, and I found myself smiling again. Genuinely smiling, the kind that comes from peace, not just pretending. And then, one day, fate handed me the kind of closure I never thought I'd get. I was at a truck stop diner in Kentucky when I saw her, Linda. She was sitting alone at a corner booth, her face worn, her clothes a little too fancy for someone who looked that tired. For a moment, my chest tightened. Memories came flooding back. But then, something surprising happened. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel love either. I just felt nothing. She looked up and froze when she saw me. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw regret in them. "Tom," she whispered, almost as if saying my name hurt. I walked over, calm and steady. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand. "You don't owe me words, Linda. And I don't owe you forgiveness. You made your choice. I just came here to tell you, I'm doing fine. Better than fine, actually." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't wait for her reply. I left the diner with my head held high, climbed into my truck, and drove away. That was the last time I ever saw her. Today, as I sit here telling you this story, I realize something important. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find out what truly matters. Linda took my money, but she couldn't take my strength. She took my past, but she couldn't take my future. I rebuilt my life. I found peace. I found love again, in the most unexpected way. And most of all, I found myself. So if you're listening to this, and you've been betrayed, abandoned, or broken, remember this: your story doesn't end with someone else's betrayal. It begins with what you choose to do after. Because me? I was divorced by email, robbed of every dollar I had. But I refused to stay down. And now, I'm happier than I've ever been.